Hello, everyone, and welcome to the launch of Havas Group's Customer Experience Report, X Index 2022. Customer experience has become an extremely integral part of marketing. Today, if a consumer does not like the services of a brand and feels that this experience was not up to the mark, then he wastes no time in switching his loyalties. While some brands win this race and others lose, the bottom line is clear that the brands that have spent time and energy into creating delightful customer experiences will grow and survive. So now, without taking much of your time, I invite Mr. Sebastian Udus, Chief Strategy Officer, BETC Full 6, to open the event and share the key findings from the X Index Global Report. BETC Full 6 is a customer service agency based in Paris. Welcome, Sebastian.
Thank you, Devesh, and thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Over to you, Sebastian, please.
Thank you. Okay, so hi everyone, and very happy to be with you at this event today. So I'm Sebastian, as Devesh was mentioning. I'm leading the X Index research since the beginning, together with my Indian colleagues. And so these are the results, the global results from this research that was led in 2021 and is now presented in 2022. If we go to the next slide, so this is a research that we've been doing globally since 4 years and 2 years for India. So it's a research based on customer experience with 9 markets, more than 50,000 people, and 500 brands that are evaluated across the customer journey. So to tell you a bit about the methodology, basically we ask people if they are a customer of the brand and if they have had an interaction with the brand, a commercial interaction, basically a purchase with the brand in the last 6 months. So why are we doing this research? Basically, it's another research that we do on the Havas global level, which is called Prosumer Report. And we did this in 2021, the future of e-commerce. And it's no surprise to you that COVID-19 has really disrupted the way we interact with brands. We asked people if they will be more likely to shop for many categories online rather than in-store. And you see the great numbers that we have here for prosumers, who are the most proactive consumers and the trendsetters basically for consumption. So 77 of them say they will shop more online for clothing, 71 of them for beauty products, 76 for electronic products and services. So COVID has accelerated the digitization of behaviors for consumers, and we think it's here to stay. So it's, of course, worth studying from a customer experience perspective. All the more, of course, if we switch to the next slide, because people and especially marketers are investing a lot and heavily in the CX. As Devesh was mentioning, CX is a make or break for customers today, and $641 billion will be spent on CX technology in 2022. So what we wanted to do with the X Index 2022 is to see if these dollars that are invested in CX technology actually show in the customer journey and for customers. So if I go to the next slide on the methodology that we have, so we really take into account the whole customer journey. So we ask consumers to grade 35 items from 0 to 10 regarding the brand image that they have, the purchase journey, the product and service experience in itself, the relationship that they have after buying with the brand, the customer service, and everything builds up to the customer experience satisfaction. So if we get into the details of the items that are rated on the next slide. So we have 3 items for the brand image. For the purchase journey, of course, we ask them to rate the brand staff, if they are efficient, if they are expert and knowledgeable and committed to the brand value. the purchase journey in itself, the online experience, and the in-store experience. Product and service experience in itself, are you satisfied with the quality, with the price, and does the product or the service function the way it's expected to? On the relationship part, we interrogate three areas: personalization, online experience is customized to my need, this brand sends me communication that are relevant, loyalty, of course, and community, the feeling of community that a brand can create. And last but not least, we have this new section around customer service. Is it efficient on the website, on social media, on the app, on the phone, etc., etc. So we have 35 items, and people are invited to grade them from 0 to 10. And then comes the data modeling that we do on the next slide. So basically, we want to be able to determine what are the most important interactions on the customer journey that builds up to customer satisfaction. So we do a data model which is called the hierarchical linear regression. So I'm not going to go into the detail and be a data nerd for now. But what is more important is that you see on the left, you have the Y, which is the global grade that people are going to give to a brand in terms of their satisfaction of the whole experience and the relationship with the brand. You have all the X's, which are representative of the 35 items that are being tested by people and graded between 0 and 10. So our goal here is really to understand what are the most discriminating criteria that build up the customer satisfaction in the end? So the why, basically. If we go to the next slide, so I'm going to give a global perspective on what builds CX satisfaction around the world. First thing, it's always interesting to see that customer experience is, of course, affected by local culture and local customs. So you see here the average grades per country. We had 2021 and 2020. Prashant is going to go into the details later, but you see that, of course, depending on the country culture, you're going to have a grade that can go from 7.2 in Turkey to 8.35 in India, and Prashant is going to come back later to this. Second thing, we saw that more than $600 billion are being invested in customer experience. And what you see on the next slide is actually kind of a result. And we see that customer centricity in the consumer eyes is not achieved yet, because we have this question: this brand is centered on my need as a customer. We talk a lot in the marketing and communication world about customer centricity, but as you see on the figure, satisfaction is not achieved yet. So we have a global average of 40%. India is 52, so it's a little bit higher, but France, where I come from, is only 29. So we see that there is still progress to be made on customer centricity for marketers and corporations. Second thing that we can take into account on the next slide is basically what we did. So as we analyzed the whole customer journey, we split into buckets all the items from the different steps of the customer journey. As you see here, in the navy blue part, actually the brand image criteria is the main discriminating factor across country. So culture, of course, influences customer experience, but there's something that is common in the whole world: the fact that the brand image is very discriminating in the satisfaction of the customer experience. So it goes from 54 in Spain, 51 in Brazil, 46 in India, and 41 in Turkey. And Prashant is going to come back to that later. But what we feel is very important, if you go to the next slide, from a customer experience perspective, of course, we're here to solve pain points for customers on their customer journey. but we have to make it in a unique brand-oriented way, because this is crucial, because basically customer experience is a brand experience. So this is really the first step for us. Then if we go into the details of what are the other part of the journey that are crucial to determine customer experience satisfaction, you see that some countries are more driven by customer relationship and service, and India falls into this category. 36% of the X-index score is driven by customer relationship and service. China is also a part of this bucket. 34% of the X-index is driven by customer relationship and service. And other countries, if you go to the next slide, are more driven by the purchase journey. So what does this mean here? It's not only functional, it can be also emotional. But what we see here, for instance, in France, it's 32%. So the purchase journey items are 42% of the X-index, 26 in Spain and 28 in the US. So these are really the global results. And the last one, which is worth mentioning, we know customer experience at the beginning is here to create less friction and to solve pain points for customers. But what we see in the research that we've been leading for 4 years is actually that customer experience is also getting emotional. So we hear also when we deal with customer experience issues to create memories for people so that it impacts positively the brand. So you see here, we did a ranking between more functional criteria and more emotional criteria. And you see that the emotional part in navy blue is actually taking the lead into the judgment of customer experience satisfaction. So 59% of the discriminating criteria are emotional in India. It's 56 in the US, for instance, 60 in the UK. So really something to hold on to. Like, of course, it's important to be good on the functional side, on the seamlessness of the experience, but we also have to elevate our game as marketers to connect with people on an emotional level. So before handing it over back to Devesh, I just wanted to mention that we are building with the data modeling 2 models basically in the X index. One is allocated to pure players. So pure player brands are digital native brands that don't have stores in the physical or the real world. And what we call bricks and clicks. So basically bricks and clicks are brick and mortar brands. So the brands that were there like years ago and that have been digitized. So we don't call them brick and mortar, we call them bricks and clicks right now. So you're gonna see 2 different models, the pure player ones and the brick and clicks ones. So thank you for the short introduction and back to you, Devesh.
Thank you, Sebastian. I really liked the part, where the research mentioned that how emotionally and it's across the world, people are able to connect with brands, and it's not just about India, and it's across the world. People are emotionally connecting to the brands, and there's a lot of science that goes behind in how brands are creating those experiences, those campaigns across multiple touch points to ensure that they're able to strike the emotional connect with their audiences. It's really lovely, and it's some of the really very interesting points you touched upon. And my personal favorite was how you took the next step from brick and mortar to brick and click. Going from the traditional age coming to the digital age. And that's a combination of both. That's really amazing, Sebastian.
Thank you.
So, talking on from an Indian context, I see a lot of movement in this domain in the last few years. Customer experience is becoming really big. Brands are working towards creating strong and seamless offline customer experiences across multiple touch points. And globally, Havas Group is one of the first movers in CX, and Havas CX present in India is already working with several marquee brands in India. But before we delve into that, let's hear from Havas CX, what they have to say. what they have to talk about, how India market is responding in terms of customer experiences. So now I invite Mr. Prashant Tekwani, EVP and Business Head, Havas CX India and Havas Worldwide West. Welcome, Prashant.
Hi everyone. Hi Devesh.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And my next guest for the day is Mr. Sumir Mathur, National Strategy Head and Managing Partner, Havas Worldwide India.
Hi Devesh. Hi everyone.
Hi. Together, they will present the India findings of the X Index Report 2022. Over to you, Prashant and Sumir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Taking forward from what Sebastian said, CX is getting emotional, and I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by this slide. With the learning that we had, that India is an emotional country. India is driven by relationships a lot. In fact, this was one of the key findings that we had last year as well. Uh, if you guys also see last year compared to last year, India, in comparison to the other countries which were part of the survey, had done very well. Even the brands at certain level were much above the global benchmarking that we had. But surprisingly, this year, India is the only country in the survey which has actually degrown. So from, if you see on the graph, we were earlier last year, we were at 8.97 as a rating, and this year we've fallen down to 8.35. That said, we are still above the global average, so which is a great thing. While most countries were able to leverage on the new normal that was being made because of the pandemic, delivering the consumers' rising expectations, some Indian brands were apparently not very agile in doing that, and that is very clearly pointed out in the learnings that we had. Sebastian also spoke about the citizen experience in terms of how the brands have moved towards citizen experience, and that is also coming out very clearly in the learnings that we have. Starting and moving on, can go to the next slide, please. Moving on to the brands that we were part of the study this year, we had about 50 brands across 13 categories. Some of the categories that we had missed out on last year, which turned out to be big drivers, were health and beauty. And this year we've gone ahead and included health and beauty as a major category as well. Apart from health and beauty, we've also included education as a category in India because we've seen the rise of edutech in India as well. The panel that had actually decided to shortlist these brands had a filter, which was where we decided that digital cannot be a by the way for the brands. It has to be a big part for the marketing funnel. And that is how we shortlisted on these brands. And basis this, there are top 10 brands which have come across. Can we go to the next one, please? These are the top 10 brands amongst the 50 that you just saw that have come across as ranking higher in the citizen experience or in the customer experience survey that we've called. Some of these brands actually have carried forward from last year. We are not surprised to see Apple back there at top. MG Hyundai was also there last year. There was Michelin as last year as well. But there are quite a few new entrants as well. Sumer, do you want to talk a little bit more about this?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing brands which are across a wide cross section, right? You're seeing legacy brands like a Taj, but at the same time, you're seeing new age brands like Cult. You're seeing different categories being represented here. You're also seeing disruptor brands like Boat being included in the top 10. So really, it's a measure of a very holistic sense of different brands have done well for different reasons. And actually, what we've done is we've gone through the data to kind of analyze what are the big 4 learnings that this report is talking about and what forms the bedrock of this report going forward. So what I'll do now is let me start with the first learning. So if we can go to the next slide. Yeah. So really our first big learning is that everything starts with trust. And I know trust is usually seen as a very, very boring parameter for a brand. It's seen as familiarity, but trust is really dynamic, and it becomes even more dynamic in customer experience. And what we've seen is that if a brand is able to enjoy a high level of trust, the brand actually gets a higher score on customer experience. And one of the reasons probably is that, Indians by their very nature are slightly interaction shy, especially when it comes to online means. And trust and familiarity actually helps people, actually guides them. It's almost like something that's anchoring their whole experience, that I know this brand, I trust this brand. And therefore, I'm willing to invest, I'm willing to engage, I'm willing to go through the entire customer experience with this brand. So it plays a huge role, especially in a market like India. So if we move forward and try and dig slightly deeper into this, the contribution to the X index of a parameter called I trust the brand. So as Sebastian has taken you through the different parameters under each bucket. So if I pick up this, the parameter of I trust the brand, the pure players, it's at 8.3. For bricks and clicks, it's at 8.3, and a global average is 8.1. So it's higher than the global average. And just to give you an example for a brand that's done well on this parameter like Apple, probably because Apple has in the last couple of years really spoken about transparency. We know that a lot of technology players are currently mired in this controversy of privacy, this controversy of what are they doing with our data. But Apple seems to have taken a different path. Apple seems to be saying that, look, this is the data I collect. This is how I share the data. This is who all I share the data, and I will help you safeguard your data. So they have new services like iCloud and features including private relay, hide my email, etc., which all help build trust, and at the same time take on a very, very big, important parameter of the category, which is security and privacy, and allow this brand to innovate on it. But it's not necessary that you have to be a tech player, right? We see in the case of a brand like Taj, which scores very high on keeping their commitments towards the brand. Taj is known for always standing by what it believes in. And in the recent past, we've seen society and environment has become an even bigger, important parameter for this group. We've seen initiatives like Meals to Smiles, which were done in order to express gratitude towards the medical fraternity, frontline and migrant workers for their unwavering commitments. And so even if you are, and Taj is a legacy brand as well, right? So here is a brand that's a legacy brand. Here is a brand that you wouldn't think is so much defined in its customer journey because it must be the old customer journey. What can they innovate on? But even they have managed to innovate. Even they have managed to change the parameters of their evaluation and score on it. So that's our second example for the trust. Now I'll hand it back to Prashant for the second learning.
Even the second learning actually kind of contributes very highly towards the citizen experience that Sebastian was talking about. Now, building an inclusive experience for all. This statement as a whole means a lot to India. Can you go to the next slide, please? Especially in the context when it comes to India. India is a very varied country when it comes to the cultural baggage that it has. Not just the cultural baggage, there's a clear divide between India and Bharat that a lot of the brands and a lot of people have been talking about. There are regional nuances that we have to take into consideration. There are technology adaptation that we need to take into consideration. Keeping in mind that almost 30 to 40% of the audience that we are still talking to in India belong to feature phone. So this parameter becomes a lot more important. Inclusivity becomes non-negotiable pillar while building one's brand. And the key parameter, can we go to the next one, please? And the key parameter that contributes to this is online experience is inclusive and welcoming to all. And this is an even bigger parameter, keeping in mind the year that we had, where the online journey needs to be seamless. And a brand that has actually kind of stood very good in the whole term is Practo. We all know that India today is only 10% of the speaking population is English. And especially when it comes to health, language has become one of the biggest barriers for people to adapt to digital in order to get the best health service. Now, keeping this in mind, and we know how the companies like even Google, Amazon have been over-indexing on putting vernacular languages, putting regional languages at the forefront. And Practo did exactly that. They have gone ahead and introduced about 15 vernacular languages for teleconsultation, which not just puts the person who is trying for the consultation at ease, but also it helps break down a lot of other barriers for him to communicate about the issues that he's having. And I'm pretty sure a lot of other brands are also following suit on this, by picking up language as a key issue and addressing that. And that is why we've also seen a lot of other brands also adapting to this. Practo being something which has helped, I've used language to make audience a lot more inclusive. We also have another example of, can we go to the next one? Of JBL. This is a very interesting example, keeping in mind that retail as an industry, we all know what it went through last year. It was almost at a point where it was completely shut. Also, we do know and we heard about from globally as to how a lot of jobs were being cut in the retail segment. Now a lot of people, a lot of brands actually, and including JBL, saw this as an opportunity rather than a barrier. And what they did is they went ahead and tried working on a parameter, or tried working on a journey where the in-store experience is a lot more inclusive and welcoming to all. And JBL took a step further. They not only went ahead and reskilled 13,000 of their own employees, but they also did reskill a lot of the employees which were there in their retail partners, with their retail partners. And this is a very important aspect as to how a brand can evolve during such a time, in order to make the overall journey a lot more inclusive for people as well. And which is why we are seeing the sales for JBL also are almost back to pre-pandemic level, so as to say. Now, while we spoke about the fact that the brands need to be inclusive, what is also important is, from the JBL experience, was the fact that it is not just an external factor. You have to also look at internal, in terms of how you adapt yourselves, in terms of trying to get the best CX. But also at the same time, we had a learning which was an outward learning, which was about being always be of service. Can you go to the next one? So in this learning, what clearly came out is brands need to build a deeper relationship with customers, which does not end at purchase product. I think this learning has been going on for a while now. We all have heard it, that how the brands need to move beyond a transactional and a functional conversation, and go beyond, above and beyond, to delight the customer from time to time. This also brings up the topic which we've been discussing for the last few years again, on what happens when the cookieless world comes in. Once the cookieless world comes in, it becomes even more imperative for the brand to stand true to this, and also start investing in their own ecosystems, so that they have complete control of the journey of the audience, and they don't turn into a only functional brand. We've also had learnings from our meaningful brand study, which happens at Havas again, where we've learned that how brands, if they do not go beyond the functional conversation, the consumers are happy to look at other solutions. So this becomes a lot more important for all the brands to adapt to. And a very important parameter for the same, can you go to the next one? A very important parameter for the same is the fact that at the end of the day, we all as brands have to start investing in our own ecosystem. And there are brands who've done a fabulous job at it, and Domino's being one of the first ones to do it. Domino's is one of those brands which has actually changed the way the category functions in the quick service restaurant business. They have a very brilliant app which has been operational for a while. The whole end-to-end journey happens on their app itself, and also the fact that their app is very intuitive, very user friendly. They keep sending you offers, they keep giving you updates on what are the new things that are coming, and they keep engaging with you. and not just at a functional conversation, but also at an emotional conversation by tapping into topical conversations, tapping into other friendly reminders using their CRM. They also ended up launching a Hindi version of the app in 2021, which I'm sure has brought about a lot of more business and helped them stay at the top when it comes to the quick service restaurant. In terms of the global average for the customer service is efficient and easy to use on the app, the global average is at 7.95. Brick and clicks saw a 8.03, which is again higher as compared to the global, while pure players was even higher at 8.18. While this was a very good example, Domino's is a very good example of how investment in your own ecosystem can help you grow the brand further and the business objectives further. What we've also realized and understood is there are a lot of brands who invest not just in client customer facing or client facing, but also in operations, and that also helps in driving a lot of efficiency. So the next example is a can you go to the next slide, please? The next example is a very interesting one, which we picked up from Byju's. Now, this is a clear-cut example where Byju's is in their second phase of innovation, where they are trying to upskill the teachers who provide education by giving them digital assets that they had created in phase one. The phase one was the product innovation that they did, and now Byju's has started investing into process innovation, where they have tied up with National Skill Development Council, where they are actually providing and upskilling the teachers by giving them educational tools, by giving them digital content which is license free, in order for them to go through and help them teach and impart knowledge to the students as well. And in return, these teachers are actually using the same tools to teach the students. And there's a certain level of love that is being built for Byju's as well. And this is a great example of how a brand not just has to work towards an external investment when it comes to digital ecosystem, but also how they can invest in their own operations. Sumit, over to you for the last one.
Yep. And the last thing that we found when we went through the data was this whole desire that brands who are able to deliver the extra get higher scores in customer experience. And, on one level, it's very easy to say this is, delights them or just give them more than they expect. So what we did was we tried to break it down and say, okay, where can this extra come from? So if we move to the next slide. Yeah, so the online experience is customized to my needs. And here's a great example in Cult, right? We all know lockdown, we all know COVID, we all know spas were shut, we all know gyms were shut, we all know fitness enthusiasts had to buy all sorts of resistance bands and start exercising at home. But at the same time, here was a brand that had all its outlets shut, decided to pivot to give you an online experience. Now, that in itself is a delta from what it was doing earlier, because earlier you could probably sign up for online classes, but that was a very small part of their entire business model. So on level one, they were allowing access to the brand and access to their facilities online. But then they went further and they actually acquired a California-based fitness company, which specializes in body tracking technology. And what this allows them to do is to use AI in your sessions and actually give everybody an energy score, which basically tracks your movements and tells you that you today in your exercise session, you had an energy score of 600, or today was a bad day, it was only 450. So not only did they pivot, not only did they decide that, okay, let me make online my core experience, but then they said, how can I top it? How can I go even beyond just giving access to consumers, which in itself was a new thing for this brand, and use AI to bring an even higher elevated sense of experience. We see the same thing in a brand like DBS, where it rolled out a slew of intelligent banking features, many of which are industry first, including some which help customers to perform their transactions with a single tap or swipe on their mobile phones. Now, again, and this is one of the things that Prashant also touched upon when he spoke for the JBL example. Sometimes these are very simple no-brainers, like why shouldn't it be some single tap? If I'm a customer, if I want to make a transaction, shouldn't it be the simplest transaction possible? And that's where some of the opportunity lies. Some of the opportunity does not always exist in investing greatly or in doing something very, very big. But sometimes even doing things which are seamless or make it more seamless or take away a small hiccup in the process can actually give brands a higher score on customer experience. DBS also rolled out another service called Intelligent Insights, which is more linked to personalized financial management on DBS, Digibank, and iWealth. So really customizing your offering, making sure that your offering, the way that it exists, feels and meets the needs of the consumer at the other end, can really help. But what if all of this was also not possible? What if you had hit the highest level of tech advantage that you could do? And our next example is kind of that. So here is Netflix. Here is a lockdown. We know people can't meet each other. We know you're stuck at home. Yes, in wave one, we all said, hey, at least there's Netflix. But when wave two came, we knew there's Netflix, but that's also not enough. So what Netflix has decided in wave two was to launch this feature which allows you to chat with friends while you're watching a show, knowing that that is the experience that people are craving for, knowing that being stuck at home and binge watching is not, top of the, is not the thing that everybody really wants to do, but is being forced to do. How can I then help them? So in the first case, when we saw with Cult and what we saw with DBS, brands were innovating in how they offer the product. Here, the brand is actually going slightly ahead and saying, hey, what's happening in the life of my customer? How can I use customer experience and how can I create delight? Keeping in mind the context in which I'm being consumed, maybe in light of something special that's happening right now, can I help consumers tide over that? So again, here, this brand often provides extra attention that goes beyond my expectations. And that's a very, very powerful attribute we found to create customer delight, which for pure players was at 7.8, for bricks and clicks at 7.8, and a global average of 7.6. So if you were to look and summarize, and if you move to the next slide, there are four big findings from the 2022 report. It all starts with trust. Trust is not boring. Please invest in it. It's almost the tide that lifts the entire experience, especially in a market like India. Brands need to build an inclusive overall experience for all. And when we say inclusive, please remember we are talking inclusive from an India context. So think about the differences in exposure levels, in how confident and comfortable people are in using technology in the consumer path journey. Thirdly, always be of service. And of course, lastly, but not least, delight them by going the extra mile. And all of this, when put together, in a nutshell, I think what we are saying and what Sebastian kicked this session off with was customer experience shifts to becoming a citizen experience when you're able to do and deliver on all four of these big trends. And you make something that is trustworthy, that's seamless, and that's inclusive at its core. So that's our report. Back to you, Devesh.
Awesome. That's really, great findings. Trust, inclusivity, service, going extra. Those were really four very interesting points. Taking the consumer experience to citizen experience. And I must say, I love that Practo experience to be more precisely, because that's the reality actually of India. Where we need more brands like that. Who can go inclusive. Putting your service out in 15 languages, I mean, imagine how many number of people they're able to cater. And Prashant very rightly pointed that, when you're talking in your own native language, I mean, if I'm a guy from Haryana or somebody from Punjab or maybe somebody from Rajasthan. And if the telecaller is able to talk to me in my own language, which is of my city, then I do, put behind my inhibitions and I can talk to him in a very, very friendly manner, and I can explain him my problems pretty well. And that is where I think the brand scores. Brands are able to, score better. I think more and more brands need to do this, and they're pretty much getting open about it. Gone are those days when it used to be only about Hindi and English. I mean, like, the two main languages. Now it's important that, if you have to, talk to people, talk to them in their own language, create the experiences in their own language with their cultural nuances. It becomes very important. Very, those some very interesting points, Prashant and Sumit, that you brought up. Thank you very much for that. Now I would request you both, to stay on the screen, and because we are now about to open a panel discussion, same on the topic of from customer experience to citizen experience. How brands need to rethink a seamless customer journey, and with Prashant and Sumit as my two guests, my other two guests for the day are Ms. Pritha Das Gupta, Chief Marketing Officer, Havas Group. Hello, Pritha. Hi, Pritha.
Hi.
Hi. And my next guest for the day is Mr. Yogesh Nambia, Director Integrated Marketing India, Herman International Inc. Hello, Yogesh. How are you?
Hi, Devesh. Hi, Prashant. Hi, Samir. Hi, Pritha.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Nice to have you all on one single panel. It's really lovely to talk about this great subject of customer experience. Which is a buzzword in the marketing industry, and it actually touches the customer, which is the core of our business. So Prashant, I'll begin with you first. Okay, what does customer experience, mean to a customer? Let's go very simple. Okay, let's be, be devoid of jargons. What does customer experience mean to a customer? What role does it play in a customer-brand relationship?
It's a very open-ended question. I know, I think it can go into multiple branches, but I'm going to try just bringing it to one. I think just referencing to the report again, India, I spoke about the diversity that India brings in terms of the kind of audience that we have. We have the India, we have the Bharat, and all of them are looking for delight. Every time they are trying to interact with a brand, what they are looking for is, where do they get delight? And more importantly, every time they are looking at, where do I get a seamless journey? The minute there is a blockage or someone gets off the journey is where the delight goes for a toss. So in terms of a great CX, a great customer experiences would for me would be, how do I create a very comfortable ecosystem for any and every consumer that I'm talking to? Now, this is very well spoken about from the fact that with Practo that I gave, or Sumer spoke about Netflix, where suddenly you're doing one simple thing which is beyond your expectation and creating that delight and automatically getting that love from the audience for him to start using your platform again. Another point to this, I think I want to add is, again, which is coming from the learning itself, is trust. The fact that the brands need to start thinking beyond the functional relationship. The audience, they are not asking for it, they are demanding trust now. So if it comes to a point where a brand has to start investing into something that has to be to build trust to a level where they are no longer just a transactional brand, they are more of they have a brand love. I know this is a word which is being used a lot, but they have brand love, and also whatever they are doing kind of leads to something meaningful at the end of the day. So yeah, that is for me in a nutshell what a great CX would be.
Awesome. Coming to you, Yogesh, at Harman, okay, how are you working towards creating those delightful experiences for your consumer? Because Prashant mentioned, that it's all about trust. It's all about, creating that right ecosystem. So, how are you creating that delightful experiences for the consumers?
Thanks for the question, Devesh. So for us at Harman, right, we actually look at a consumer's day. So right from the time that they wake up to what they do next with from their alarm clocks to their bathrooms where they would like to hear music when they wake up, to when they get into the cars. So because we also do audio inside, branded audio inside cars, to when they get into a mall or a store or their office, because we also do a professional audio setup with inside offices, malls, stores, and auditoriums, cinemas, theaters, everywhere. So, and then when they end up going to a restaurant or a pub, club, wherever, so we, the complete cycle of an individual's day is what we try and address. And not all our customers do understand what kind of products we bring in. Like every customer cannot be told about the sound directivity technology. Every customer cannot be told why JBL calls their sound signature sound, how we develop that signature sound. So it was very important for us. So when so pre-COVID times, we could still give a customer a touch and feel on the product. We could go into their houses and actually showcase to them what a 5.1 surround soundbar should sound like. Or we could get into their cars and explain to them why there are 8 speakers versus 6 speakers or 12 speakers. And post that, when people literally, that 6-foot distance was just in the news and everyone was talking about the 6-foot distance. Yes, inside a bus it came down close to about 1.5 feet too. But as a brand, we wanted to maintain that distance and still give the customer the experience. So what we said is that instead of trying to train them via a lot of digital mediums, we said, first, let's train our internal people. Let's first train our internal people to how to adjust to this new norm. This distancing piece itself was going to eat into a lot of our selling cycle. So we trained almost all our partners, retail partners, sellers on the floor, and sanitizing the product every time that a person was coming back, to build their confidence back, saying that, okay, we are taking care of you. We are. So they had the face shields, they had the masks, and we were literally training them on how to follow these etiquettes on a daily basis. Because trust me and believe you me, it is cumbersome to wear a mask for 8 hours on a shop floor. Absolutely. It is cumbersome to do that. So and while doing that, be motivated to sell a particular product, right? So it was very important for us to look internally and do this piece on a regular basis without dropping the ball on this one, saying, let's not drop the ball on this one, because this is what builds a trust in the brand. See, we have been in the business for about 75 years. When James B. Lansing launched JBL, and when he designed a new cone with a sound directivity technology for cinema, he did not think we were going to hit a pandemic. But given the current scenario, how do you explain the bounce or the reflection or refraction of sound to a customer without touching them or without being with them? So that was the most critical part that we looked at. We follow within our CRM process and customer service process, we follow something called the NPS, which is the Net Promoter Score. And that's extremely critical for us, and it is watched on a weekly basis. So there are some who do it daily and then throw up the numbers to us weekly. And although net promoter score that we get is of 4% of people who buy our products, we are trying to see how we increase that number. Globally, we are at a 7%. In India, we are at a 4%. We're trying to see how we increase that number. But eventually we will get there, I'm sure. And we look into each and every complaint, let me tell you that.
Great. I think that is, pretty more important. The last line that you mentioned, that you look into each and every complaint that comes from the consumer, and, you personally, the team's, individual addresses that complaint. That is pretty much important. And that, I think, creates the value system of trust within the consumer. And that generates the kind of word of mouth which every brand actually aspires for.
Absolutely. For us, from a brand equity score point of view, which is an insight study that we do year on year, the 4 core equities that we follow for each of our brands is brand love, brand trust, sound quality, and immersive listening, because we are an audio company. So the last two are more functional, but the first two are more emotional. And which is what I think the Havas team has worked out and said, that there are two emotional and functional qualities that people look at from a customer experience point of view. And I guess they've just hit the nail in the coffin.
I was of the opinion that that the emotional quotient works very well within the Asian subside Asian segment. But when Sebastian was presenting the report and the dark blue segment that was across the globe for multiple countries, and I was like amazed to see the response, the emotional response of the people towards a brand and how well they connected emotionally with that. I always thought it was more functional in the Western side. It was more emotional on the Asian in the Indian context, but that was a really eye opener for me. Coming on that point, Sumit, to you, while we are talking about the India market, the report mentioned that the India rating has degrown in terms of while delivering a better consumer experience. So, what are the possible reasons for that? Why it's happening like that?
So firstly, let's acknowledge that the absolute numbers are fine, even compared to the global numbers. It is relative to ourselves that yes, the number seems to have dipped. What we have internally thought is a couple of hypotheses that could have led to this. One of them is the fact that there is an inertia that sometimes occurs with legacy brands to innovate, and they think that this much is enough, or this much in itself is such a big jump from where we used to be, that they stop innovating. But the fact of the matter is today's innovation is tomorrow's hygiene. And therefore, you have to continuously work at making the consumer journey more and more delightful, more and more seamless, more and more inclusive, more and more trustworthy, etc., etc. Secondly, we feel that, in year one of COVID, maybe the mere fact that you were available online or you were able to do some things online gave you a delta. But in year two, that became hygiene again. So this year, the expectations have gone up. People know, for example, for a practo, now we know, right? Now every doctor knows that there is something called online consultation, which is a viable business model for him. It's not just about his clinic and the hospital that he works with. So hence, what next becomes the question. So a couple of hypotheses. I don't think we have any clear answers. The other part that I want to mention, and which we encounter sometimes when we work with brands, is a hesitancy and is a sense of inhibition that they don't want to open this CX box because God knows what they will be forced to do, or what the recommendations will be. Do they have the bandwidth? Do they have the skills? Do they have the investments? And that kind of makes people step back a little bit. So that could be something that's playing on the minds of brands in India, especially in a year which is a COVID year, which could have made them hold back a full-on embrace of CX. But again, these are hypotheses.
Very interesting point that you made, Sumit. From what I understand is that a lot of education needs to be probably done in this domain, especially with the brands. And while Prashant also mentioned that there's the way we look at it is there's a segment in the India market and there's a segment in the Bharat market. While the India segment might be a little more aware about this, but in the Bharat market, I think more education and more handholding might be needed for this sector. Coming to you, Preetha, what are your thoughts when it comes about emotionally attaching with how consumers are emotionally attaching to the brands,
Yeah.
and how brands are inadvertently creating the customer experience for that. What's your thoughts on it?
So Devesh, like we are discussing that India is driven by emotions, and especially during the year of pandemic, consumers had one eye focused on what action brands took to make themselves available and helpful to not just to their consumers, but also for their stakeholders across every touch point. And unfortunately, some brands did not fare well on this parameter. And perhaps this could be one of the factors contributing to the degrowth, which the report mentions.
Interesting, interesting. All the panelists, I mean, like, as we are running really short on time, so I'm, jumping on to the last question. Okay. So how do you see the role of customer experiences, emerging in the purchase decision of the consumer in the near future? Because today, if the customer experience is not right, it is becoming very evident that, customer tends to shift the loyalty. So how much of an importance is, this entire domain will play in his purchase decision? What could be the possible reasons? Prashant, I'll begin with you first.
So for me, I think it all begins with the brands and the brand managers actually trying to understand who the audience is, what is the journey. Today, currently, a lot of the brand managers are actually working in a very siloed approach, so to say, with digital having certain part that they wanted to play with POS having a certain part in the whole system, where they need to start understanding the audience and the consumer that we are trying to talk to is a very dynamic guy. His journey is not linear. He is not saying ki I'm going to come here and purchase and then I'm going to go away. He has a very dynamic journey. His way of purchase is also very different. Some start with awareness with Google, some start with awareness with word of mouth. How, as a brand, am I going ahead and being relevant to the audience at each of the journey that I'm talking about? How I am giving the right support and right content, so to say, in order for the person to be there. More importantly, how am I creating an experience that the consumer is bringing? I'm bringing his consumer journey as small as possible for him to purchase the product. And as the report also said, and as I have pointed out, how do I keep in touch with him in order to keep engaging with him? And eventually, which also means that this investment that I'm doing in keeping that relationship is somewhere helping me save money somewhere else, where when the whole conversation of media also begins. So for me, it's a lot more looking back at yourself, looking inwards also, and identifying what works and where do you need to change in order to bring about a change in the purchase journey as a whole. One thing I think is, I think Sumer already touched upon it. Digital transformation, CX. People are very, very scared and afraid, saying that, oh, it will require a lot of investment, and not just investment in terms of money, invest in terms of time also, investment in terms of knowledge also, because people are not aware of what is going on. I think what we as partners and we as brands and marketers also need to start doing is, we need to start building ecosystems that are parallel to the ambitions that we have. If as a brand your ambitions are to grow and become the best in the class, your ecosystem needs to at some point in time support you with that ambition. I think I've said enough, and it's a little too technical now. Thank you.
Sumir, your thoughts?
Yeah, so without taking too much time, I just want to make 2 points. One, if you saw the flywheel that Sebastian shared at the beginning, there are actually some 35 parameters on which you can innovate. So don't think this is one big thing, all of it. Rome wasn't built in a day. You don't have to try out doing everything at the same time. There are different aspects about the customer experience that you can leverage. You can decide, you can stagger it, you can see what's most important and work through it. Second thing, while Prashant faces the wariness of clients and brand managers every day, the fact of the matter, the fact that we have an offering in the market right now, that Havas has this offering, is a sign of how conversations are beginning to grow, how clients are reaching out to us to help them work on the customer experience journey. So that's a good sign. So if I take that as a sign, as a surrogate measure, it's only going to get more and more important.
Interesting. Yogesh, there is a question for you actually from the audience, before I come to your thoughts. How does a brand manage customer experience and a journey across many age groups, profiles, and generations? Isn't it difficult to manage expectation and ensuring consistency?
So one of the beliefs that we have at Harman, stroke JBL, stroke Harman Kardon, and all the brands that we work with, is that uh, do not consider customers as fools, because at the end of the day, you're actually trying to train their ear, or their ears are. So either you're going to a trained ear, which is an audiophile, or you're going to a novice, but he knows what he wants to listen and how he wants to listen to it. So do not consider customers either as complete novices or complete fools. They know what they want. They know the quality that they want. If you can deliver on that quality, and also without them owning the product or having the product, or giving them a demo of the product, telling them this is what you will get. So at the end of the day, if they see what you see is what you get, which is what we call visibig in our term. If they see what they're getting is what they actually saw, then they'll buy it. They will go for it. There are ups and downs in every product, right? We don't, like Sumir mentioned, that Rome was not built in a day. It took us close to about 75 years to reach where we are today. Our cuts on customers have keep changing. So till about 4 years ago, we were only trying to deal with the latest generation of Generation X. Now there is a Generation Z, there is a Generation Z plus, and so on. And and honestly, as marketing guys and as brand managers, let's go with the age bracket. Let's not term them something. And believe you me, when we were that age, we were also this disgruntled with life. You need to know this. And we suddenly, when you reach a certain age, you tend to forget what you did when you were 18. I was absolutely rebellious, and you should ask my parents this. And they will tell you lots of stories, but I know, and they keep reminding me even today. And that's the education that I bring here on and try and understand. And I just tell all parts of my businesses that please do not consider consumers, the end users, as fools. If you fool them, they will catch you someday or the other. Especially the new generation, जो किसी के भी नहीं है. मतलब if you do not give them what they want, they will jump your box immediately. They don't have a problem. They don't have a problem carrying. They're not like यार JBL ही पहनना है. वो जमाना चला गया.
True that. Pretty words of wisdom, absolutely. So, Preetha, your final thoughts on, how do you see the role of customer experience playing a role in the purchase decision of a consumer?
So, in continuation with what PT Prashant and Sumer said about building an ecosystem and the response we have received so far from, or we are seeing in India, I'll say that, Havas Group India has actually made great strides in establishing the CX ecosystem in India, perhaps the first ones to do it. And the X Index report, gives us a great opportunity to create meaningful conversations and connections in the industry, which are two of the biggest, ethos of the network. And not just with our existing clients, but with marketeers, intermediaries, VCs. And I'll just say the response we have seen are extremely overwhelming, and we continue to, make those meaningful conversations and connections.
Great, ladies and gentlemen. Those were some really great insights. And, there's no doubt that, in near future, customer experience will play a huge role in the purchase decision of the people. And I think, after hearing to Prashant, Sumer, and also the words of wisdom from Yogesh and also from Sebastian in the beginning, brands need to start working more towards creating those experiences for their customers. You cannot fool them. The day you start fooling them, they'll catch you, and their loyalty will completely shift. So with that, I close the day, and it was lovely having you all over here and talking to you. Thank you very much for being a part of this discussion.